Cambridgeshire Police, how can we help?
Hiya, it's Mrs. Walker. I'm just ringing to report my 17-year-old daughter missing.
Okay, I'll get a report for you there. How long has she been missing?
Well, she ran away on Saturday lunchtime, but I knew where she was until she started messaging like 1 a.m. Yesterday morning.
Right. So she stopped messaging 1 a.m. yesterday morning.
Yeah, and I gave her the day to sort of stew it out a bit because it's not the first time she's done it.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I've become aware of the fact that she's not where she told us she was. So obviously I'm fine phoning now.
No, that's fine. What we can do then for you is we can get that raised. Bear with me a second and we'll start raising the missing from home report.
Yeah.
Welcome to our channel. Before we dive into today's true crime story, we'd like to share a brief disclaimer. This video is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The content may include graphic details and sensitive topics that some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. The information presented is based on publicly available sources and is not meant to harm or defame anyone involved. Now, if you enjoy gripping stories like this and want to join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new upload. Your support helps us continue bringing you these fascinating stories. All right, let's get into today's case. This is a tale drenched in sorrow and betrayal, where the sanctuary of family becomes a labyrinth of treachery. It is the story of a 17-year-old girl who vanished like a whisper in the wind after a heated argument with her mother and stepfather. At first, her absence was cloaked in the innocence of speculation. Perhaps she had simply run away, seeking solace from the storms of home. But as the days turned into nights and the shadows deepened, the truth began to unfurl, dark and jagged. Beneath the veil of ordinary family life lay a chilling revelation, a tapestry of deception woven with threads of cruelty. What was once a comforting haven became a stage for unspeakable acts, a betrayal so profound it echoes like a haunting melody through time. This is not merely a story of disappearance, but a lament for trust shattered and innocence betrayed. It is a stark reminder that sometimes the hands meant to hold and protect can be the very ones that strike, leaving behind a void that chills the soul and lingers in the heart like a ghost. This is the haunting story of 17-year-old Bernadette Walker. When Bernadette confided in someone she thought she could trust about a devastating experience, she expected support. Instead, she was met with a betrayal that would change everything. Our case began on July 18, 2020. Bernadette vanished without a trace. Her case is not just chilling, it forces us to question who we can truly trust. As her family, the very people she turned to for help, not only failed her, but turned their backs on her completely. Bernadette Walker, affectionately known as B to her loved ones, was born on December 13, 2002. Her story takes place in Peterborough, Cambridgeshire, England. B's mother, Sarah Louise, parted ways with B's biological father shortly after her birth. The circumstances surrounding their separation remain unclear. B was described by those close to her as a shy individual when meeting new people, but outgoing, fun-loving, and vibrant within her circle. She had a passion for art, particularly photography, and rarely went anywhere without her camera. After high school, she pursued her love for photography at Peterborough College. B also dreamed of moving to the United States after finishing her studies. Like many teenagers, B enjoyed social media, but preferred interacting with friends online due to her introverted nature. She also had a fondness for knitting, a skill she learned from her grandmother, with whom she shared a close bond. B was deeply connected to her family and was seen as a gentle and expressive person who aspired to make her dreams a reality. When B was a toddler, her mother met Scott Walker, who lived next door. It was 2006, and Sarah, pregnant with her 6th child, had moved in with her 5 children. Sarah had been raising her kids alone after parting ways with B's biological father and cycling through various relationships, leaving each child with a different father. Scott, Sarah's new neighbor, was married at the time to a woman named Jill. Jill and Scott had been together since August 2004. Their relationship began quickly, with Scott moving in with Jill and her teenage sons just 2 months after meeting her. Jill initially saw Scott as thoughtful and caring, but his behavior soon took a dark turn. He became controlling, obsessive, and paranoid, accusing Jill of infidelity without cause. Jill described Scott as manipulative and emotionally abusive, often using frightening threats to exert control. Though Scott never physically harmed Jill, his emotional abuse was enough to make her feel trapped. Despite this, Jill agreed to marry Scott after 10 months of dating, likely out of fear or desperation rather than love. The marriage, which took place in 2005, only amplified Scott's demanding and selfish nature. He showed no respect for Jill, who eventually found herself seeking an escape. When Sarah moved in next door, Scott began openly flirting with her, which Jill viewed as an opportunity to break free. With the help of a friend, Jill left Scott and served him with a protective order, cutting ties entirely. Scott wasted no time transitioning into a relationship with Sarah. Bee, then a toddler, grew attached to Scott and even began calling him Dad, a fact that becomes especially chilling later in the story. Though Sarah and Scott were not legally married, Sarah changed her surname and all her children's surnames to Walker, signifying her commitment to the relationship. Together, Sarah and Scott went on to have 4 more children, making for a household of 10 kids in a 5-bedroom home. Life in the Walker household was chaotic and far from ideal. Sarah worked in geriatrics, while Scott bounced between odd jobs. On social media, Scott portrayed himself as a larger-than-life figure, though his actions behind closed doors painted a far darker picture. According to Bee's brother Anthony, Scott was both physically and verbally abusive toward the entire family. Anthony also alleged that Scott had numerous affairs and maintained a toxic environment in the home. Perhaps most disturbingly, Anthony revealed that Scott had installed cameras throughout the house, including in the family bathroom. Scott claimed these cameras were to catch Bee hiding candy wrappers in toilet paper rolls. But the implications of this surveillance in a home with 10 children are deeply unsettling. As dark as this revelation is, it seems the story is about to take an even more sinister turn. By July 2020, the tension in the Walker household was at its peak. Scott Walker, now 50, remained manipulative and controlling, while Sarah Louise, age 37, had recently given birth to a baby girl in June. Bee, now 17, was caught in the chaos of a family falling apart. Sarah, tired of Scott's toxic behavior, had finally ended their relationship and started seeing another man, Chris O'Connell. What made this situation even more unsettling was that, despite their breakup, Scott continued to live in the Walker home. To make matters worse, he imposed rules on Sarah's relationship with Chris, dictating that she could only stay at Chris's house 2 nights a week and that Chris was forbidden from setting foot in the Walker house. It was a bizarre and domineering arrangement, given that Scott was no longer her partner, just a housemate at that point. On the night of July 17, 2020, around 10 p.m., Scott drove Bee to his parents' house in Warrington. Bee was dressed in all black, paired with a blue denim jacket and thick frame glasses. For reasons that remain unclear, Scott confiscated Bee's phone during the drive. When they arrived, Scott's parents noticed that Bee seemed visibly upset. She went to bed around 1 a.m., but by the next morning, her life would take a tragic turn. At approximately 10:25 a.m. on July 18th, Scott picked Bee up to take her back home. However, Bee never made it. Scott later claimed that while stopping near Skater's Way for a cigarette, Bee suddenly opened the car door and ran off. He said he tried to chase her but couldn't keep up, so he returned home. When Scott arrived home, Sarah noticed that he appeared exhausted and on the verge of tears. However, she didn't give it much thought, as her focus was no longer on him. Alarmingly, though, Sarah didn't report Bee missing until 3 days later, despite being aware that her daughter hadn't returned with Scott. This delay in reporting was both suspicious and troubling. It's natural for parents to act immediately when their child goes missing. Yet Sarah's inaction raises significant questions. Why did she wait so long? What was happening during those critical 3 days? The answers are devastating, as they reveal just how alone and vulnerable Bee truly was. With no one to protect her, not even her own mother, her fate was left in the hands of those who failed her the most. Over the years, chilling details about Bee's life and the events leading up to her disappearance have surfaced. Bee endured unimaginable suffering, living in a home dominated by an abusive father and an emotionally absent mother. Whether Sarah's neglect was due to being overwhelmed by raising 10 children or other factors, her failure to protect B is inexcusable. B was subjected to years of abuse at the hands of Scott Walker, a nightmare that lasted nearly 7 years. When B finally mustered the courage to confide in her mother, she hoped for support and protection. Instead, Sarah accused her of lying, choosing to defend a man who had a long history of abusive behavior toward his family, previous partners, and even his children. Adding to the betrayal, Sarah threatened to kill B if she told anyone about Scott's actions. This horrifying response from her own mother left B completely isolated. Despite planning to leave Scott, Sarah still chose to protect him over her own child, an unfathomable and heart-wrenching act of neglect and complicity. When Sarah eventually reported B missing, 3 days after her disappearance, her answers to basic questions raised red flags with authorities. Sarah claimed B had sent a text stating she was staying with her ex-boyfriend Luke. However, neither Sarah nor Scott attempted to contact or visit Luke to verify this. Police immediately sensed something was amiss. As investigators delved into Scott and Sarah's activities, alarming inconsistencies emerged. Scott's phone records revealed it was turned off for 91 minutes on July 18th, the day B vanished, shortly after he picked her up from his parents' house. During this time, it is believed Scott attacked B and disposed of her body. Afterward, his first call was to Sarah, a 9-minute conversation that investigators suspect involved planning the cover-up. Further searches led detectives to a lock-up garage owned by Scott's parents in Walton. While B's body was not found, her backpack was recovered. Inside, police discovered B's diary, which contained a heartbreaking entry. "Told my mom about my dad and the abuse. She called me a liar and threatened to kill me if I told the police." These words painted a devastating picture of B's isolation and desperation. Detectives also reached out to B's friends, many of whom confirmed she had confided in them about Scott's abuse. One friend, Warren Naylor, shared that he received a message from B's Instagram account on July 19th, claiming she had lied about the abuse. However, since Scott had confiscated B's phone, it became clear that these messages were sent by Sarah and Scott, who were attempting to fabricate a narrative of B running away. The evidence pointed to a sinister sequence of events. After B disclosed Scott's abuse to her mother, Scott likely attacked her in a fit of rage. Sarah and Scott then worked together to create the illusion that B was alive, sending messages from her phone to friends and family. On September 14, 2020, both Scott and Sarah Walker were arrested on charges of murder and perverting the course of justice. Despite extensive efforts, B's body has never been found, leaving her story as both a tragedy and a grim reminder of the devastating consequences of betrayal and neglect from those who should have protected her most. Despite the absence of a body, the evidence against Scott and Sarah Walker was overwhelming. The trial highlighted Scott's abuse of B and painted a clear motive for his actions. Numerous witnesses, including B's friends, testified about the horrific abuse she endured at Scott's hands. Predictably, Scott denied all accusations, even attempting to justify the hidden cameras in the house, including the bathroom, by claiming they were meant to catch B hiding candy. However, this excuse rang hollow, given the disturbing context of his behavior. One particularly sickening piece of evidence was a comment Scott left under a Facebook post. When B updated her relationship status to indicate she was dating Luke, Scott replied, "Any boy who kisses you better have the image of me in your head," accompanied by a black and white photo of himself. This comment further revealed his inappropriate fixation on B and added to the damning evidence. Sarah, while slightly more cooperative, admitted to sending texts from B's phone to create the illusion that she was still alive. However, the messages were quickly identified as fraudulent. They lacked B's tone and personality, and the claim that B had lied about Scott's abuse was so bizarre that it only cast more suspicion on Sarah. Her delay in reporting B missing, combined with inconsistencies in her and Scott's stories, further weakened her credibility. Despite Scott's continued insistence that B had simply run away, the jury reached a decisive verdict in 2021, nearly a year after B disappeared. Scott Walker was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. A key factor in his sentencing was his refusal to disclose what happened to B's body, invoking Helen's Law. This legislation, introduced in 2020, ensures that prisoners who withhold information about the location of their victims' bodies cannot be released on parole. Sarah faced a separate trial. While there wasn't enough evidence to implicate her in B's murder, her involvement in the cover-up was undeniable. She was found guilty of perverting the course of justice and sentenced to 6 years in prison. With Scott and Sarah's sentences handed down, the trials concluded, but the heartbreaking reality remains. B's body has never been found, and the true extent of what she endured may never be fully known. 3 years after the trial of 17-year-old Bernadette Walker, her body remains missing, and the full truth about her fate remains shrouded in mystery. Despite exhaustive searches using drones, specialized equipment, and K-9 units, no trace of B has ever been found. The only person who knew the truth, Scott Walker, took his secrets to the grave. Detective Justine Jenkins, who led B's case, reflected on the tragedy. We may never know the truth about what Scott did and why, but we do know Bernadette had made allegations of abuse against him. B's brother Anthony fought tirelessly to uncover answers about his sister's death, holding on to the hope that investigators might one day locate her remains so he could say a proper goodbye. However, on December 22, 2023, Scott Walker died at the age of 53 while serving his sentence at HM Prison in Full Sutton. His death closed the door on any possibility of discovering B's final resting place. Scott's refusal to disclose what he did with B's body remains deeply unsettling. Many speculate that he withheld this information as a means of maintaining control and inflicting additional pain on B's grieving family. Even after his conviction, Scott seemed intent on causing as much harm as possible. B, a talented photographer with a kind and forgiving spirit, respected Scott as her father despite the suffering he caused her. Her story is one of heartbreak and injustice, underscoring how deeply she was failed by those who should have protected her. Sarah Walker, convicted of perverting the course of justice, is expected to be released from prison in 2027. Her future remains uncertain, as does the fate of the 9 remaining children she brought into the world. While redemption is always possible, her role in B's suffering and the choices she made leave little room for optimism. If you are a victim of abuse or feel trapped in a dangerous situation, do not hesitate to seek help. Contact the police or a trusted support organization. While family and friends may not always provide the safety and support you need, there are professionals who will believe you and help you. Evidence can make a difference, but even without it, reaching out is crucial. B's story is a devastating reminder of what can happen when action is delayed or ignored. Let her tragedy be a call to intervene, to believe, and to protect those who are vulnerable. For those who knew B, and especially her siblings, the hope is that they find peace and healing in the wake of such an unimaginable loss. Sometimes the only way forward is to focus on moving on, even when the pain feels insurmountable. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who would love it too. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update or our latest videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next case.